Welcome everybody. Welcome back or welcome for a first time if you're a newbie to us, but either way, we're grateful that you're joining us in the smack dab in the middle of summer here. And a decent crowd tonight, but this is especially for 2025. It is officially game time. Those
It's
bullets,
party time.
those bullets are flying. So it's we don't have the choice anymore, but as you're going to hear us say, I think collectively more than once tonight, you're not too early if you're 26. Believe it or not, you're not too early if you're 27. So we're going to talk we're going to start with kind of some messaging that is near and dear to me in the beginning here that will likely come through. It usually does when I present it, but I want to give some context as to like, why the heck is college so expensive? And I have a point to that. Then we're going to talk about, again, I know we're predominantly here to learn about the Common App and what do you need to know given that it's coming out this week. But anytime we talk, we have to talk about the financial piece of this because we think they're so interrelated, regardless of your financial situation. So we'll start there before we kick it to Brian. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Peggy, do we want to do some housekeeping stuff before we say hello?
For our groupies, you know the drill, but for newbies, and why don't you just quickly put in the chat if you're a newbie, been around a little, or you're affectionately what we call a groupie. And no matter where you are, we love questions. We're all here to answer them. If we can get to all of them, put them in the Q&A. You can be anonymous, which is great. We'll remind you because people join and start putting all this stuff in the chat. It's just one place for us to look. We will put stuff in the chat that we want you to click on and be able to look at. But yeah, put everything in the Q&A. That's the main thing. Oh, and it is being recorded. So if you get distracted, it's all good. We will send that out to you. And also for our groupies, they know, hang on to the end. We're very respectful of your time, but we always reward our live people. So
Definitely
hold on till the end of the hour and it will be
always
it,
and especially we go up and we have our classes and this is just something we've done for a few years just because it makes sense, the nature of our seasonal business, but we have kind of surge pricing, rush order delivery. So we go up in prices starting August 1st and then again in September 1st before. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're closed for business even before September 1st would be my guess for our more comprehensive stuff. So stick around to learn those details. But before we get there, we got plenty to cover. My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm the founder of College Aid Pro. Class 2025 is a special group for me because this will be the 20th class that I've shepherded through this process, which is amazing. But it's something I take a ton of pride in. My team takes a ton of pride in, and we really we love it, right? Because it's this overwhelming, anxiety-ridden, expensive, but also very rewarding process. And we just want to help people go into this eyes wide open, just make good decisions because, and you're going to hear us say it more than once, if there's two things you remember, it's start now and don't go at this process alone. That's the two pieces of advice that are universal. And if you can just kind of do some version of that, you have great odds to be very successful. So you guys are in great hands today. We have the fairy godmother of financial aid. That's Peg Keogh from Seattle. We have Brian Ford, who's one of the most experienced admissions counselors I've ever met in the 2 decades that I've been in this space. He's read over 60,000 applications and essays from Boston University for the UCs and other institutions. So he's very renowned in our space. When we go to these big conferences with Brian, everybody knows Brian, and he's earned that reputation just with his experience. And so you guys are in great hands today. And Peggy, if you want, you can kind of kick us off here, and then Brian, you can kind of reintroduce yourself when we pass you the mic.
Yep. All right, let me share my screen here and let's get the party started. So there were a lot of people that said they were newbies, so welcome. We are so happy to have you. I don't even know if Matt mentioned that he was one of the founders of College A Pro, but he is. And this truly is our mission, to end the student debt crisis, student loan crisis, by empowering families to shop smarter for college. So as Matt said before, if your child's class of 27, 26, 25, pat yourself on the back for being here. Many parents just drift through this process. Brian was sharing when we were in the green room, parent that was talking to him like, gosh, I wish I met you so long ago, because I know I left money on the table with my older kids. So kudos for being here and starting to learn. The more you understand about this process, the better off you're going to be, because it's a lot of it is counterintuitive, and it's just a nutty process. So educating you, Matt said he loves it. This is what gets us out of bed. So this is why we're here. This is what we do. So there we are. Everybody should have received an email earlier today encouraging you to set up your free MyCAP account. So a bunch of you already did, so that's great. If you didn't, Matt will put this in the chat. Definitely go ahead and do this. mycap.collegeapro.com. Click get started for free. Create a username and password. There's some onboarding questions. If you're not totally sure about all the answers, don't worry. You can skip them or just put in a number, because later you can go and update all of it as you get more learned about this. But this is the place to start. I'm gonna talk about student aid indexes in a minute. It's gonna give you your student aid indexes. And yes, the groupies know I love emojis. So whenever you want to send one up, just go for it. It's the little things in life that keep you going. But definitely set this up, because as we're talking about the financial piece at the beginning, before we turn it over to Brian, you're going to be learning about financial aid, but then you can see where you fit. And that's the real important thing, so that you can start building a good academic, personal, and financial list that meets all three of those. So definitely get in there and do that if you haven't done that already.
Yeah, it's a competitive advantage. You're starting your process specifically on the financial side on third base just by setting up your account there. So I don't need to tell most of you this, right? The biggest financial concern for 73% of parents and students today is how are we going to pay for college and navigate this process? What if we're not eligible for aid, but we can't afford it? What if we're a business owner? What if we're divorced or separated? What are going to be the best fits at the right price for my kid? All of these questions, right? And who are we going up against here, right? Why is college so expensive? And you can go to the next slide, Peggy. Now, the point of these next two slides actually is to elicit some emotions with people. I think it's important that you know, why is college so expensive? We get the question all the time, is the bubble going to burst? The answer to that question is very easy. No. Why isn't it going to burst? Because you have three massive entities that benefit from college being expensive. Obviously the colleges themselves, right? If you have a business and your costs get to go up every year significantly higher than inflation, that's good for business. Now, some of the reasons why college is expensive are incredibly justifiable. World-class facilities, amazing professors. We're going to go have the best 4 years of our lives, hopefully, and then graduate with these great opportunities. That's why we are still, even though I bash colleges consistently, I'm still a huge proponent and a huge fan, and think for so many families, it is the right way to start their adult life. Now, what I don't like about colleges oftentimes is how they run their businesses. If you're in marketing, you should work for a college. On average, their CMOs make $375,000 a year. They have a staff of full-time employees between 9 and 24, again, full-time marketing professionals on average. You have outliers like Purdue University, 250 full-time staff between marketing and communications, okay? The US government, now, again, I don't think there's three evil geniuses here, but there are some built-in challenges with this system. The US government's a great example. 33% of our US government's assets are in student and parent loans, okay? It is by far the government's biggest asset class that they own. So if you do the quick math there, you could very quickly say, well, you know what? They need actually college to be expensive, right? They're not motivated to have the cost of college come down. And of course you have Wall Street, right? When you have any marketplace that this much money flows through it, Wall Street's going to be involved. How are they involved? If you're fortunate enough to save for money, you probably open to 529. If you need to borrow, Wall Street says no problem. We got your back. Come here for a private student loan. Between those two products, Wall Street benefits to the tune of $630 billion. Okay, so they're approaching $1 trillion just in assets from those college products. All that's to say, there's no bubble that's going to burst. It's only going to be us. It's only going to be the consumers that are going to be the ones that are going to help us stop this $1.8 trillion, crazy debt here. And you can quickly go to the next slide, Peggy, that I'll just spend 30 seconds on. The real superpower, I think, of kind of those three entities that we go against as consumers, it's the only one that we navigate on our own. Everybody just figures it out, which is the most famous last words of all time that I see the long-term ramifications of on a daily basis, right? So if we go to buy a home, we have Zillow, we have Redfin for price transparency. We can work with professional agents. Taxes, we're DIY are great. We can use TurboTax or work with a professional. This is the only major investment we go through as adults. We don't have something that we can rely on in terms of a technology and in terms of professionals, infrastructure, et cetera. Obviously, that is the gap we are trying to fill. And you can go to the next slide here, Peggy. It's very simple. Oh, maybe it didn't make it in there, but I'll say it again, okay? If there's two pieces of advice that you remember from tonight, it doesn't matter. I can just say it. It's don't navigate this process on your own. We don't care if you use free resources. We don't care if you use work with our rivals. Don't go at it alone and start now. Okay, those are the two pieces that are going to maximize the odds of not being, adding to that $1.8 trillion in debt. All right, Peggy.
All right. And I would encourage you to work with us. I'm not encouraging you to go to our competitors
Right.
or rivals, whatever you want to call them. Okay. So I've already had a couple questions in the Q&A that are kind of getting into financial aid. So that's great. So perk up, listen to this before we kick it over to Brian. We are not going to go deep. We will do that on a subsequent webinar, but we want to give you enough here to be dangerous to start understanding this. So the biggest takeaway here is that all these colleges are on sale. We all know these massive sticker prices. They're pushing $100,000 for class of 2025, 26, 27 for sure at some of these colleges. So it's crazy, crazy expensive. But all these schools are on sale, if you will. They're all discounting. It's just a matter of what kind of families they discount for and how they discount. And that's what you have to understand, which is a big part of what our software will help you do. So how are they doing this? They're doing it in three different ways. They're offering what are called need-based grants. So as the name kind of hints to, you have to have financial needs. So you need to understand that. Don't believe your neighbor who tells you don't submit the FAFSA. It's not going to do you any good. Friends and family are lovely, but in this process, they are not people to take advice from. Every family is different. Honestly, I have twins. I've been through this. My two kids were different, how a school would treat them because they were different. They had different resumes and they had different grades and test scores. So even within a family, it can be different. So the need-based grants can come from the federal government, your state, as well as the colleges. And the lion's share of it, we call that institutional aid, comes from the colleges. So that's the need-based piece. It's free money, don't have to be repaid. That middle bucket you see, merit-based scholarships, also is free money. It comes from the lion's share of it from the colleges. There are private scholarships. That's a whole nother topic. But this is based on your student. It's not based on your income and your assets. So for some families, this is the name of the game as far as getting discounts off these $95,000 sticker prices. And then the third bucket, we call it self-help, but this is loans and work study. So it's loans you obviously have to pay back. And then there is a need-based aid item called work study that if you have need, you can get it. Your child has to get a job and work that job and gets a paycheck, and you decide as a family how to use that. So both of those are part of a lot of family strategies. Obviously, you want to maximize the need-based grants and the merit-based scholarship bucket. So you need to understand where your child is going to be eligible for those. So first, let's talk about the need-based financial aid. Pretty simple equation that is used here. They take this cost of attendance, which is tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, personal expenses, anything the college requires. That's that full cost of attendance. They take that number, they subtract your student aid index. That's a new term for the new FAFSA that went live for the 24-25 school year. I just added expected family contribution back into our deck because the schools that require the CSS profile, the second financial aid form, they're still calling it EFC. So I don't want people to be confused if they see that term. They both fit into this equation in the same place. You are submitting the forms and SAI gets calculated from the FAFSA, EFC gets calculated from the CSS profile, and they take the difference and that's your need. So if a school costs $80,000 and you have an SAI, you've set up your MyCAP account, you're looking right at the top, we're putting it front and center, your federal SAI, which is the FAFSA, and then your institutional, which is from the CSS profile, say that's $50,000. So 80,000 minus 50, that means you have $30,000 of need. That doesn't mean every college is going to say, okay, here you go, Johnny, here's 30,000 in those need-based grants. A lot of them won't meet your full need. Those are all the things you need to understand to be able to build an affordable list. Say, same example, $80,000 school, but your SAI/EFC is $120,000. And believe me, all three of us on this webinar have seen plenty of families that have very high SAIs. Doesn't mean that you're willing or able to spend write a full check, as I like to say. So, but you have no need. 80 minus 120,000 obviously is a negative number. So that's where you're going to have to strategize around how can we find good academic and personal fit schools, Brian's sweet spot, right? But also find affordable schools because they're all important. So that's how it works. So your next question is probably, all right, Peg, I get it. I understand what an SAI is. How is it calculated? There's two main buckets. There's assets, and it's student and parent, and parents or parent, depending on the family type, and income for both sides, right? So let's talk about assets first. Basically, all assets are on the table except retirement assets. So that means 401k, 403b, IRAs, any type of IRAs, Roth, inherited, traditional, those are all retirement accounts, pensions, those are not part of this calculation. But everything else is on the table except for your primary home that you live in. Most schools in the country only require the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That's the only form they use. And the home you live in, your equity in your home, meaning your market value minus your mortgage and your HELOC, whatever that is, that's your equity. That is not on the table at most schools. This CSS profile that I mentioned earlier, those schools will look at your primary home equity in varying amounts. Some don't, even though they require that form. That's all built into our tool. So you don't have to get too flummoxed about the whole thing. So that's the only one that's out of the equation potentially. If you have a condo or you have vacant land or a cabin in the woods, all of that secondary real estate, that equity is going to be part of this bucket, this asset bucket. A big question that we get, so we just proactively answer it because it's a great question. What about our college savings accounts, our Coverdell IRAs? What about 529s? If the parent owns those accounts, which is typical, and the student's the beneficiary, it's an asset of the parents. It is included, but it's an asset of the parents. And that's a key thing. If you're a 2025 parent, jot that down, because when you're doing that FAFSA and the CSS, you want to make sure that goes in the parent bucket. Children's assets, student assets are assessed at a much higher percent. So you don't want to make that very common error. If grandma and grandpa own a 529, again, pretty common, that's not even in the mix. Like, you're not including that on the FAFSA. And actually on the FAFSA, if you have 3 kids and 3 different 529s, I had 2 529s, 2 kids, I would have only put Shannon's assets on Shannon's FAFSA, her 529, not my son Brennan. So I'm getting in the weeds here on that, and don't worry about all those pieces because we'll do webinars on that. But all of these college savings accounts are part of the mix if they're owned by the parent or the student. UGMAs and UTMAs are custodial accounts. That's going to be a student asset. So there's strategies around that. You really need to talk to us one-on-one to get into that. Now, when you're submitting these forms, the value of your assets is literally, if you want to be this exact, the day you hit submit. So you can pull up your portfolio and say, it closed at this, the market was down, that's my value. It's real time. Now let's look at the other piece of the puzzle here, the income. That is actually the flip side. It is not current income. It is a 2-year look back, and we call that prior year. This has been in place for a while. President Obama put it in place. So we have 2025 parents. When you're doing these forms this fall, it's going to be all about the 2023 tax year. 26s, 24, just like it says on the slide, and so on and so on. So what's valuable for class of 2026 and 2027 parents, you know this now. So your income is what it is. You're not going to quit your job unless you can afford it to make college cheaper, right? And to get more financial aid, but don't create more income than you need. And so there's different things to talk about around that. It's mostly based on your adjusted gross income. There's a few add-ins, but that's the biggest driver. And of course, they're looking at student income too, but you can see on the slide here, on the federal side, on the FAFSA, kids can make over $9,400 in that tax year, and it's a wash. So for most kids, it's not a big driver in the equation because they have a nice federal allowance, but that's how it works for the income. So if you're sitting here thinking, all right, I get it, Peg, I'm looking at my MyCAP account. Yep, I'm falling into that category where my SAIs are high, but there's no way in hell I can afford $100,000 in 2 years when my child starts. What do I do? So I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt, to kind of talk about that second bucket and effectively getting discounts.
Yeah, and I promise I'm going to be about 3 minutes here, guys. Brian's going to get the most shine tonight. I know ultimately we're here to focus on the Common App and the admissions process, but we have to talk about the money piece of this. That's just a core part of what we do. And I just know, just by the volume of folks that are on here, there's a percentage of you that you can follow every tip in the book that we offer. We're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, but we
Yeah,
don't want to
guys,
start
put
paying.
your questions in the Q&A, remember.
Yep,
Paste
Q&A,
them in
not the
there,
chat.
paste them in there.
Yeah, if you were a little bit later to showing up tonight, put the questions in the Q&A. We'll do the best to get to all of them. We won't be able to get to every one of them, but we will pick off as many as we can. So how do we get discounts, right? Just because we're not eligible for financial aid doesn't mean we're ready to start paying $99,000 a year for college times 4 years times 3 kids, right? Obviously, the number one piece is scholarships. Who's going to give us merit-based discounts? I'm going to show you the most reliable place that you can look to see who's going to give your kid the most of merit-based scholarships, even if they're not brilliant students, right? Couple other things I want to mention here. Number one, not every college gives scholarships. None of the Ivy Leagues offer scholarships. Nobody's at MIT on a scholarship. So it's important just to have that information, especially if you have a really competitive student. And the other one here is, guys, and this is especially true if we're not eligible for need-based aid, it applies to everybody. But as you guys are finalizing your list of colleges here, you have to apply to competing colleges. You have to, because guess what? This is big business. And we always leverage colleges against one another just to get more money out of them. Oftentimes, more often than not, I would say we make firm recommendations that our families apply to particular colleges, knowing there's zero chance we're going to attend. We're just going to use that offer to get more money out of their top choice. Okay. Now, Peg, if I could, let me just share briefly before we give Brian the mic here. So it was awesome to see most of you have already created your accounts. If you haven't, just take a minute to do that now, because you're seeing what these colleges are actually going to cost your family. You're seeing, oh my goodness, the $95,000 college, if you're a family that fits somewhere in this bucket, which will be a lot of you, the $95,000 college is going to be more affordable than the in-state state university. This is a Massachusetts resident here. And why is Boston College way more than Amherst College. You know, they seem very similar schools. Well, Boston College considers all the equity in your primary residence to be fair game. Amherst considers none of it to be fair game. NYU is more like Boston College. That's more than you need to know. Let the technology do the work for you. Answer the questions. We'll tell you what they're going to cost. But when I want to go look for scholarships, right, I can just go to search for schools, put in some admissions criteria. I want to stay pretty close to home. I prefer smaller schools. My kid's thinking about majoring in bio. Put in any number of those, and then you can just sort based on who's going to give my kids scholarship dollars. And we'll rank order that way automatically, right? Maybe Wheaton wasn't on the list, but if they're going to give you a $40,000 scholarship, regardless of the family's financial resources, let's put it on there. If nothing else, as a negotiating chip. If we are eligible for financial aid, we can sort just based on that, right? And then, you know, maybe, wow, it's incredibly hard to get into MIT, but here's some other great schools that are checking our admissions boxes that are really generous with need-based financial aid. So that's just kind of a crash course in the financial aid scholarship piece of this, and we want to just make sure you guys have that resource. And now, Peg, if you want to skip to Brian's slides here and let him dig into what I know a lot of folks are most interested to learn tonight.
Thank you so much, Matt. Always good information, even if sometimes sobering, or the student debt being, you know, a third of earning. I don't know if you saw me writing that down. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put that in a few of my slides. So I did my absolute best to answer a lot of the admissions questions that were in. Please, a reminder, put them in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to come through and answer some more. But again, my name is Brian Ford. I am an admissions specialist here with College Aid Pro. I've spent my entire career in and around college admissions. First decade being on the college side, kind of most notably at Boston University. I've recruited, you know, in 16 to 17 different states, have read for multiple countries, was the first reader, got on over 60,000 applications, but I've seen probably more than 100,000 in some respect. I've spent the last 10 years on the high school side, as well as doing consulting, as I do for College Aid Pro. I currently am the director of school and college counseling at Boston College High School in Dorchester, Mass. An extremely competitive, nationally known all-boys high school in the Boston area. And so my career and my passion really is helping students find the right fit. I met with 6 of our Wake Me families last night, and I reminded them it's not my job to tell you where to apply to and where not to apply to. It's my job to ensure that you have a well-balanced college list, so that no matter what happens in this process, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, you're really excited about your options. And I pride myself on that, not only with the students I work privately, but the students that I work with at BC High. So today we're going to talk about the Common App, because we are on the eve of the launch. So if you were to log on to the Common App right now, you would get this little kind of difficulty/down message, because what the Common App is doing is currently feverishly working to change from the 23-24 year to the 24-25 year. We've already gotten one question about it, and so I'll just tame some nerves. If you have already built a Common App account, first off, applaud yourself. That's awesome. As long as if you have put any information into personal info, it's not going anywhere. So don't worry, you're not going to have to fill that in. What I will say, and this is something that I tell all the kids I work with, is if you put info into any of the specific college stuff, that is going to get erased. And the reason being is because schools have the right to change. And that's why this is getting changed. So, you know, if you were putting in specific, maybe supplemental questions, know that schools have every right to change those questions. And so a lot of that gets reset, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So, you know, the Common App is the most widely used application in the process. There are college-specific applications for a lot of schools, but to be honest, most schools would rather you use the Common App at this point. It streamlines their reading and their downloading process. It makes it a lot easier for them. There are a few exceptions, and we'll talk a little bit more of those at the end, but I'd say the most notable one that students know of is the University of California system. They have their own application, their own process. It's a little bit different. We work individually with those students too that are applying on that. We're not just working with students if they're applying to Common App schools. The big advantage of the Common Application is that you can fill out a lot of information just once, and it's going to go to a bunch of different schools. So it saves time. In some cases, it saves money. It is a huge, huge time saver and something really every student should be creating an account on the Common App. So we're going to go through it a little bit now. So as I spoke of, it's really kind of the central or online portal. The majority of the schools are located in the US. There are some schools in Canada and a few schools internationally, but I'd say close to 90% of the schools on there are domestic schools. They vary in all shapes and sizes and academic profile, academic institution, all Ivy Leagues are on there. A large majority of the flagships around the country are on there, as well as, really small liberal arts schools throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest. This can be a place that you can essentially only have to fill out this application to apply all the schools, depending on what your college list looks like. So when you do sign on and once it updates, this is kind of what the homepage looks like. This is my first reminder. One of the things that I always tell students, and you're going to see it littered through the presentation, but it's really important that I repeat myself. I love working with our parents, not only at the schools that I've worked at, but privately. But it is crucial that it is the student who is creating the account. And the biggest reason for this is you're going to be asked, just like you would create an account for anything these days, you have to attach an email to it. You have to put in your information. Everything is electronic these days. So especially if this is your first time going through it, there is no longer the run out to my mailbox every day and wait for my admissions decision and hope it's there in the mail. Yes, you eventually do get a package if you're accepted. First way you're going to find out is through email. And it's going to be this email that you sign up with. But it's not only going to be the decision, it's going to be if your application is complete, if there's updates you need to put on your application, if there's going to be events that are specific to students, whether it's students, schools visiting your school, or area college fairs. All of this information really should be going to the student at this point. And so, I've dealt with, unfortunately, many situations where the parent creates the account and does all the work, and then the student needs to be the one answering the questions, and it causes headaches. And so make sure you're using that student email, and the student is the driver of this process. So when you're going to create that account, there's going to be a lot of different things that you're going to ask. The biggest thing, and I will say I should have updated that, you're going to select planning to start college in 2025 now. For the vast majority, you're probably going to be listed as a first-year student, and so you're going to want to click that. You're going to make sure to put your full legal name. Some of this may seem obvious, but there is a reason why I harp on it. And that is because in all of my years of experience, there have been situations where that hasn't happened. So maybe you're one of those students who maybe you go by your middle name, or maybe you go by Mike instead of Michael, and that is commonly known in all of the circles of your life. But this is going to be audited in the same way any other type of legal document would be. You have to consider this a legal document. And so it needs to be your legal name. It needs to be your birth name. Whatever is on that birth certificate needs to go on that common application. When you sign up, this is what it's going to look like. And there's going to be kind of 4 to 5 main tabs that you can work through. The first is the dashboard. Right now, it's not going to show a ton. But as you start to put in applications, this will be a good place to get some very simple updates on some of your applications. It will let you know if deadlines are coming up, things like that. We'll go through the other ones. I'll just say off the top, the financial aid resources are very simple. What you're going to get with My College Aid Pro is much more in depth than what they offer on the Common App site. So within the Common App, there are a few different areas, but the 2 kind of crucial ones that you're going to look at are the My Colleges and the Common App. And what you're going to find with the My Colleges and how you do it is in this college search. So in this college search, you're able to look up any school that is on the Common application. So after you create your account, you want to know if a school is on the Common App, you search for it here. If it's on it, great. If it doesn't show up, that means they're not on the Common App and you're going to have to find another means to apply. Again, over 1,000 schools are on this. And so it's very simple to use. Now, one of the things that you could talk about that we'll talk about a little more in depth, but you'll notice one of the buttons up there says application requirements. That is a great way to kind of search if you're searching for maybe schools, whether they have early decision. I saw some questions about that I'll look to answer. If they require SAT or ACT scores, there's all different ways that you can filter and function out, making sure that you're keeping up with what schools require and what they don't require. So within the Common App, that is essentially your personal information. So again, for those who already logged on, created an account and started, if you did anything on this tab, it's still going to be there on Thursday when the Common App opens up again. There are a number of different tests. The difference between the Common App and the My Colleges tab is what is filled out on the Common App goes to every school that you apply to. So this is general information about yourself. So as you can see, and we'll go through each one, this is your original profile, which is very much kind of, your biographical information. It's going to ask about your family, where you go to high school or where you've gone to school previously. It will ask about test scores, and we'll talk about how you navigate that a little bit, but there's also a certain strategy of that. Certainly talk about your activities, and then that writing piece, that is the personal essay. So that essay, 650 words that maybe all the students are starting to think about. Certainly ones that we're thinking about here at College A Pro. I said in one of the answers, I met with 6 families last night. I've read some really, really awesome essay drafts from the kids that we're working with. Kids talking about everything and anything, and we're working down to that 650. Right now, we're all in the content phase. We're going to have to fit it into the Common App box soon. But that's going to be the essay that goes to everyone. Supplemental essays we'll talk about in a second. So family is going to ask about your birth parents. It shows every different option. It's going to ask them about your parents in terms of where they went to school, if they went to school, what they studied, what their career is. It's going to ask about immediate siblings as well, too, what their age is. If they are of college age, did they attend college, where they attended? This is just information collecting for the colleges so they can find ways to potentially connect you to their school in certain ways. Many times, sometimes a kid might have to ask mom or dad, hey, what year did you graduate from Stonehill College? What year did you go? What would you call your career? So this is one, certainly, again, student needs to be the driver, but parents may need to step in and help out a little bit here. In the education tab, it's going to start to ask questions about where you're currently attending high school. But if you're a student who's also maybe transferred high schools, or maybe you've moved, so you've had to move, then it's going to ask you to put in those previous high schools too. You'll be able to search all through high school, and it will come up. It will ask you what your date of entry is. And so you want to do your freshman year. So maybe a lot of you, for example, the school I work through is 7 through 12. The year you're going to put in the Common App, though, is the beginning of your freshman year. So that 4-year period of kind of those traditional high school years. And then they'll, ask some other questions. You can see the one right there. Is it a boarding school? They'll ask questions about the size of the school. These are ones that maybe you might need to ask your school counselor about. It's something that I walked through all of our boys at BC High this spring in terms of, size of school. What is the size of their senior class? It will ask questions about how your GPA operates in your school, all of this kind of stuff. Again, it is ways for these schools to verify what they are doing in terms of kind of their information. Now, this is where test scores come in, but it's really important to know that each school has its own testing policy. So we've talked a lot about test optional on these pages. We've also, in some respect, talked about what it means to self-report your scores rather than having to submit required test scores. Really quickly, self-reporting means that you can report them either through the Common App or another means that the college sends up without having to pay for the College Board report or the ACT report to be sent. Not every school allows you to do that, and some schools may take scores in a different way. So this is very much something that as you're filling this out, you can put this in, but then know schools may take this information and use it in different ways. Something you definitely want to be talking with your counselor about, or with your, College A Pro admission specialist, of depending on your list of schools, whether you should be putting scores in here. Now that's for SAT and ACT scores. You can also put your AP or IB or any type of TOEFL score in here. Those are ones outside of, some particular schools, and maybe some certain majors aren't necessarily required. So general rule of thumb, I usually tell kids to submit 4s or 5s for APs, maybe some 3s, depending on the subject matter and what they're applying for.
Brian, you just want to double down on that real quick, just because I know we get the question all the time in terms of should we or shouldn't we submit test scores?
Great question. And I know it's already been asked a couple times, and test scores are more than hot than ever before. The College Board and the ACT are in certainly a battle right now. The ACT just came out and has completely revamped their tests starting for spring 2025. So the short of it is there is no clear answer of yes, you should, or no, you shouldn't, because it is so dependent on who you are as a student, what schools you're applying to, what major you're thinking about, and what does your academic profile look like. Now, there are over 1,800 schools nationwide that are test optional. So it's important to note that when you read the New York Times or when you read the Wall Street Journal, I'm not saying don't read those articles. They're obviously, well informed, but you would look at and maybe think that every school is switching back to requiring test scores. And some of the best schools in the country are Ivy Leagues, certain top 50 schools, certain flagships. Doesn't mean they all are. But test optional also means different things depending on what school you're looking at. So test optional at Boston College or at Boston University may mean something different than test optional at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, or University of Kansas. And who you are as a student and how you fit into their profile really makes a difference in terms of whether I think it's a good idea for you to submit test scores or not. So when I'm sitting there with one of my students, I'm not saying, okay, we're going to send your test scores and we're not going to send your test scores. I'm saying we're going individually, school by school, looking at their averages, looking at their historical averages, 3 to 5 year history, looking at how they've reacted to test scores since the COVID world and how they've brought in that test optional into their reading process, and then making a determination for you as a student whether you should submit that score to that individual school. It is not a yes or no question. It is a true strategy and sit down process. And so for some students, regardless of the scores, if there's 12 schools on their list, they may send them to 7 and not send them to 5. And in some cases, they may not send them to a school where the average is a little bit lower than maybe one they do send them at, because we know there are schools that are very open in saying, well, even though if you're a little below our averages, we're test optional, but honestly, we'd rather see those scores. And so we work so intuitively with our students to ensure that they're getting the best out of those scores. At the same time, I pride myself on working with every student that our students are not judged for 4 hours on a Saturday morning, but are judged for 4 years of work. And so that's highlighting their transcript. That's working incredibly hard on their college essay. That's why we're working on them in July and not, the third week of October. And that's nailing this activities page that we're just going to get into. This is all a science, but it's certainly an art too. And there's nuance to it. And that's something I pride myself on, individually working with each student to make sure that we're getting the best of that nuance out of it. So within the activities page, you're going to get asked a lot of things. You're going to ask, what have you done? And so you can actually just go, or you can just go to that, excuse me, you can just go to that next one. We're going to, when you're looking at this, you're going to see a number of different ways that you can add in activities. One of the things that's really important is you can only put in 10, and that number might even get a little bit smaller. And there are certain schools that limit that and only allow you to put in 6. So if you're one of those kids that does a lot, you need to prioritize what's most important to you and put it in your application. And I'll have kids say, oh, well, can I add in like a resume after? I'm going to be really honest here. If the school does not require a resume, they're probably not going to look at it. When I was working at BU, I was reading somewhere between 80 to 100 applications a day. So I was looking at what we required of students. I also wanted to be equitable in my reading. So if we didn't require something of everyone, we can't use it for one student and then not use it for another when we didn't require it of all students. And so there is a reason why they're trying to put you in these boxes, because they want to make it equitable and make students have to share the same amount of information. So you're going to have to think of, what are the activities that are most important? And these aren't just school-based activities. So obviously, I'm sure a bunch of you are athletes. I'm sure a bunch of you maybe work in student government or are in the arts or in music. But this is also where you can put a part-time job. This is where you can put Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. This is where you can put community service opportunities that you take advantage of. And so you need to take the time to not only prioritize, what 10 activities you're going to put in, but then you have to prioritize out of those 10, what's most important. Because here's what I'll also say. This is a human process. Yes, AI fits into everything, but humans are still reading these applications. And while I prided myself on reading all 10 activities, I'm realistic and honest to know that there may be some scanners and those application reading. And so you may only get your first 2 or 3 looked at with real nuance. And so you have to make sure that those are the 2 or 3 that you think are most important and kind of put through. Now, that doesn't always mean the one that you spend the most time on. It's what you think is most important to you and really benefits you. So, if you're a 3-sport athlete, it doesn't necessarily putting the 3 sports on the top, because maybe that's probably going to get fit into other pieces of your application, letters of recommendation, maybe your essay, things like that. Maybe there's a community service project or service trip you went on that you're really proud of that you want to put higher on the list that maybe isn't quite so obvious. And so this is something that I individually, again, go through with each student and make sure that we're highlighting as much of their activities as possible. So these are just some of the notable schools that don't use the Common App. So what we did today was we went through the personal school, the personal information. I'm going to quickly talk about the My Colleges tab here, but I first wanted to show you, this is where a lot of schools that don't use the Common App. So if you're applying to some of these schools, you probably won't find them on the Common App. Now, that other tab is the My Colleges. That is where you add in those schools. Under each of those schools, you're going to find a drop down. And again, we would love to show you, but the Common App isn't live right now. And right now, what would happen on that is you'd start to answer specific questions about that school. Those questions only go to that school. And so if you're applying to, say, BU and Providence asks questions about, whether you want to live there or not, BU doesn't know that you decided that you want to live on Providence's campus. So don't worry about that information kind of getting crossed. That is also where you will find those supplemental essay questions that have become so crucial and so popular. As more schools have gone test optional, but also as the nuance of college admissions has continued on, the boom of supplemental essays is here and it isn't going away. On average, with the students I work with, they now have 20 to 30 additional essays that they need to be writing in the college admissions process. That is very different from even 5 years ago. So even if you maybe had an older child who has gone through the process, it has very much changed. And those essays run the gambit in terms of what they offer. And we've done some webinars on those, and we'll do them again this fall. But they ask everything about the school's mission statement, to what your favorite flavor of ice cream is, to writing a top 10 list, to talking about the time that was most difficult to you and why. And they vary in terms of size and the ability of what they're asking. And so that is something that students need to be thinking about. If you're a 2025 person, you need to open up that Common App on Thursday, put your schools into that list and gain an understanding of what's required. Because you may be surprised by a school if you drop that down, say you're applying to Wake Forest, you didn't realize that maybe they had 4 supplemental essays, including one that literally just says, write a top 10 list. No other information, no other materials. Maybe you're applying to University of Maryland and didn't realize that they have 6 questions that are 50 words or less. A lot harder than you think in terms of trying to think of good answers and what makes that stand out. Again, this is something we help our students with, but it's something you need to be putting in now so that you're not popping that school in on October 15th for a November 1st deadline and realizing, oh God, I have 6 more essays that I have to write. So it's crucial that you're taking that time now. So that's very much a 30,000-foot overview of the Common App. Again, this opens up on Thursday. They said noon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little later than that. But you can go in, create your account, plot those schools in that you know that you're going to apply to, and start to see what do those deadline dates look like, everything like that. You can certainly see some of those schools have updated their stuff online, but know that when that opens up, that's going to be the official stuff, because that's going to be what's on the application you're applying to.
Brian, there's a whole bunch of great questions in the Q&A. Some of these are really specific, and I think above Peg and I's pay grade there.
All right.
Yep,
So I'll let you start picking
definitely.
those off. But the one question that we got a bunch that just, take 1 minute to explain. These schools that have like the Common App and their own supplement, do we have to do both? And is there an advantage to do one or the other?
No, unless a school is coming out and saying something really specifically, like use our app and we'll give you a scholarship or a fee waiver and it's going to save you money, like use the one that's easier for you. So, I'm working with a group of students that are based in Texas. There's the Texas State app that a lot of the state schools in Texas use, but a lot of them are on the Common App too. A couple have sent emails to prospective families saying, hey, if you use our application, we'll waive your application fee. Then obviously we'll use the Texas State app in that situation, save you $80 to $100 depending on what the fee is for that college. But in most cases, I just think it's, you know, ease of use. You're going to fill something out once, then having to fill out something over and over and over again.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I'll just, I know the three of us are very much aligned on here. So obviously you guys chime in if I left something out here, but we got a ton of questions around early decision, right? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Is it going to hurt our aid? Is it going to help our chances to get in, right? My version of how I answer that question is I say, look, as a family, you have to check two boxes with a lot of confidence, a lot of conviction. Number one, you have to know about how much that college is going to cost you, right? Are they going to give you financial aid? Are they going to give you scholarships? How much? About how much can we expect it to cost? And can we stare at that number and say, you know what, that works for our family? We're comfortable with that. And then the second box, arguably as important, more important, certainly right there, 1A and 1B type of deal. Is this really the kids' kind of dream school? Were they what I would say, in my experience, smaller percentage of kids that had this aha moment, you know, this is where I need to be. Okay. And if there's hesitation with either of those, it is probably telling us ED might not be the best fit. So, again, that's how I answer it. I know Peg and Brian have a little bit of their own variation there, but I think we're more or less aligned.
I think the biggest thing is it's always concerning for me if a family comes in to want to work and they don't have a finished college list yet, and they're saying things like, we want to use early decision to our advantage. Because what that does is it tells me that there's not really a true understanding of what early decision is for. Now, there's no denying that it's an advantage in the process in terms of admissions, and you can read up and down, you know, schools in terms of their acceptance rates, early decision or restrictive early action in the case of some of the Ivies and Stanford, comparable to that of their regular decision pool. And on certain cases, if a student is looking at those and maybe has a school in their top two, we'll have a conversation about, okay, this is what it would look like if you apply a regular decision. But you have to have the schools in mind too. You have to have that conversation with some meat in the game for the schools and not be thinking in the theoreticals. If you're just coming in of saying, okay, I think I'll use my ED on this school, that's not really the purpose of it. And you're going to find that that's going to limit your ability to potentially gain merit money or admissions to other schools. We saw that last year. A school that I talked about a lot in the spring was Northeastern University, in terms of the wide ability and difference between their acceptance rates and early action to regular decision. And that many students who used their restrictive early action on a school, you know, in the Ivies or a sub Ivy like a Stanford or a Notre Dame, and maybe fell a little bit short, then couldn't apply early action to Northeastern, got put in the regular decision pool, and found that there were students maybe of lower profile to them in early action getting in, but they weren't getting in regular decision. And so you have to look at your whole list and look at that whole strategy and make that decision of, do I want to take this leap, before understanding how it could affect some of your other chances.
It's a big decision. It's not to say we're not against it, and there'll be plenty of times that we green light it. You have our blessing, not that you need it, but it's a big decision. So,
well, and it falls into that bucket of just like test scores of when you send them. It's a very specific strategy discussion around your child and your family.
Exactly right. So I'm going to tell you I'm going to walk you through some specifics in terms of how we can help everybody from here. And you're going to see we have something for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. You kind of know I'm a DIYer. I'm not a DIYer. I need the most help. I just need a little help. We have something regardless of where you are on that spectrum. I'm going to focus on our admissions, at least our combination packages tonight, specifically for Brian, because his roster for the class 2025 is just about full. So if anybody's listening saying, I want to work with that guy, this is going to be one of the last opportunities to do so. So a couple things here, again, a little bit more context about us, our team as a whole. We've been doing this for 200 plus years combined. We've guided an awful lot of families through this process. You know, we have the former director of financial aid at USC on our team, the director at MIT, at Harvard, some of these great colleges across the country. And what I truly believe is the way that we deliver the most value for families is supporting you on admissions and financial aid. Again, regardless of whether you're a top student, an okay student, you're eligible for financial aid, you're not eligible for financial aid. this is some data that I think is helpful that would help me make a decision like this if I wanted to work with a firm like ours. On average, we save families about $70,000. Okay, this is over the course of 4 years. So again, that's kind of our bread and butter. We save people money for college, full stop. That's what we are best at, I would argue. Brian, his sweet spot is obviously on admission. Our data says there, you're 3 times more likely to get in your top choice, right? Now, obviously, and again, that number is not pulled from thin air. Does that mean everybody's going to get into Harvard if you hire us? Of course not.
No.
We are maximizing your odds of getting into the schools that are within the realm of possibility for your kid. And we're going to have some specific recommendations, and Brian specifically, on what are those good fits. And again, on average, if you work with us from the admissions and financial aid side, here's how many hours we're saving. We're saving families, which we kind of look at as that's time back you have with your kid. And this is us kind of stepping in and saving some of the, I don't know, normal tension, anxieties, et cetera, that are in some ways inevitable with this process. So on the financial aid side of the fence, we're going to help you figure out what schools are going to be the most bang for our buck. What are the good fits, but they're also going to give us the most in discounts, whether it's financial aid, scholarships, both, who competes with one another directly, right? Maybe we don't care about Providence College, but we want to go to Stonehill. And if that's the case, well, we're going to apply to Providence just as a strategy. We do all the financial aid applications for you. A lot of divorce separated folks wrote in who should do it. Do they have to do it? FAFSA, CSS. We do the FAFSAs. We do the CSS profiles for you. But more than that, it's really the how. I always equate it to like having a really good accountant, a really good CPA. How you present your situation to these schools is going to dictate the size of your discounts, right? So we worry about who needs what, where, when, how. We get involved with negotiating or appealing, right? You get an offer back from a school. We have a tried and true method, a very good team that specializes in how do we go back to this school with this scenario and get a better deal than the initial offer. And then finally, we're just putting a bow on the class 2024 with, we know where we're going. We know what's going to cost. How are we going to pay for this? So we have 529s. When should we use what? Grandparents are helping out. When do we tap into that? We need to borrow. How do we get the best rate possible? Should it be through the federal government, the private sector, et cetera? And the financial aid piece of it, to me, is like we're grabbing the wheel for the parent or parents primarily. Where on the admission side, Brian is really grabbing the wheel with the student, right? So making sure that we nail the Common App, we nail the supplements, we nail the essays. Where do we send the test scores to? Where do we not send the test scores to? Where do we send the APs to? Where do we not send the APs to? Which activities should we list first based on the student, based on the college, right? Based on the major, all those variables are going to tie in. Okay. And what schools that are you guys thinking about now that you're missing some others that are going to be great opportunities? Should you interview? Should you not? Should you not? How do we nail that piece, right? I like to articulate it like, and this was brought to me by somebody in the admission space, somebody else on our team who was like, look, your kids have worked their butts off 16, 17, 18 years building this amazing house. This market is so stinking competitive now. It's almost like in some ways that's not good enough anymore. So our job is to, and Brian's job is to help these students figure out, well, how do we stage the house, right? How does it show up the right way on the website, on the marketing, et cetera? Because it's these small things with these razor thin margins of who gets in and who doesn't. If we do all these little controllables the right way, we're just maximizing our odds. So that's, I think, to me, you know, the big role that Brian is playing. Okay. So,
And Matt, I'll
please.
very quickly say, because I know we're short on time. One of the things that I pride myself on is trying to build a timeline that works for the student. I think one of the advantages is I'm in a high school every day. I know what students are going through, particularly in that fall. And so trying to help them build a timeline where they can get everything done, but that they're not pulling their hair out and sitting there at midnight on, you know, Halloween night before November 1st, trying to make sure that we really work with families to make sure it works, whether you're an athlete, whether you're in play, whether you're doing some study abroad. You know, we work with your schedule to make sure that you can get your applications done.
And I know sometimes, not with everybody, but you got to play Taskmaster, right? And let it be Brian, not you guys. So you don't have to do that at home. And I know Brian does a great job of holding the kids accountable. But again, and everybody's different, right? So we have, for just our financial aid package, we charge, well, we'll go up to 3,500. On Thursday, we will go up to 6,500 for our admissions package. Okay. The combination, right? So combined, that'll be what is it? That'll be up to exactly $10,000, right? As of August 1st. Anybody that jumps on board tonight, I know this is a huge investment. This is not going to be for everybody, and I'll talk about those of you that are more the DIYers. If you jump on board tonight, not only do you get in before the price increase, but use this coupon code, and I'm sure Peg's already put it in the chat, right? You sign up right through here. Use coupon code WakeMe500. It's $62.49. So you're going to get a one-on-one expert that's going to guide you unlimited hours through the financial aid process. And right, so you have two experts on our team, and you have Brian to work with your student, right, through this admissions process up to 20 hours, which for most students is going to get you there, right? And if not, if you need to build in some a la carte stuff as those 20 hours approach, certainly we can do that. But for most folks, that will get them there. So this is my firm recommendation, right? For anybody that's and obviously I understand it's a big commitment. You're going to get a return on this investment, certainly from the admission side, but from a dollars and cents wise. That's again kind of our first language here. So that is again something that I would recommend. If you're someone that's going, look, that's something I would never do. Okay, that's just not. I'm a DIYer, or we already are working with a counselor, whatever. I don't see the value. Whatever your reason is, at a minimum, go ahead and at least sign up for what we like to call, or what we affectionately like to call, the club, where you pay for the premium access to our platform. You pay $25 to get on, and then it's $9.99 a month after that. You get full premium access to the software. That stuff I showed you that you could search based on who's going to give you the biggest discounts. You can put unlimited colleges in there, right? For those of you that are in the free version, you can already put 3 schools in there, and you get a whole bunch of other features that, again, is that if you're a DIYer, at least get in here so you have these resources as you guys go through this as a family. Again, that's something that we'll only show to some of our live audiences. If you go to look online right now, you'll see that to get on the software, the premium version is $149. This gets you in here at a lot lower price point. But again, what I would firmly recommend is take the leap tonight, right? If you're even thinking about it. If you just to take advantage of this deal before we go up in price on Wednesday and before the coupon expires, if you don't get a chance to talk to your spouse tonight, or your ex-spouse, right, or anything like that, but you want to take advantage and lock it in, make sure that you get to work with Brian as well, go ahead and sign up tonight. And then if you say tomorrow, you know what, this is actually not the right fit, my spouse had a different opinion, my ex-spouse had a different opinion, we'll give you 100% refund. You can just write into support@collegeaidpro.com, or you can talk to one of the experts on our team and say, hey, I got the package last night, but let me talk to Brian one-on-one, or let me talk to the financial aid expert one-on-one to make sure that this is a good fit. And if you talk to any of the individuals on our team and you feel like, you know what, I overextended myself last night, or whatever, I'm having buyer's remorse, we'll give you again 100% refund. But we always like to reward our folks that again show up for us live, and again, for a lot of people that maybe have been thinking about us but been following us for a little while, now's the time, because Brian's just about done with his 25 roster, and again, we're going up in price on August 1st, just because again, we'll close for these comprehensive packages every year, just because we can only handle so many of them. But obviously we have the membership for those of you that are the DIYers. But Peggy, did I miss anything here, Brian? I mean, would
No, I think
no, I would just, I would, again, it's we want to work with you. We hope to work with you. I'll reiterate what Matt said. Now, if you're a 2025er, Thursday is go time. It is a time to get started. It is a time to start looking and making a plan And that's what we specialize in.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said at the top, if nothing else, at least, and I'm great. And you can sign up and pay right through the link, guys. And whoever, you'll hear from our team tomorrow. So whoever signs up tonight, you'll hear, and you will get to work. We had a question, is working with Brian an option? I said yes, but just likely you just have to sign up tonight. And if you just wanted to do the admissions piece with Brian, I have to look at it, but I think it's ballpark $4,000 is what it would be for Brian for that. And again, you can write into support@collegeaidpro.com and say, I actually just want the admissions piece. And our team will get you set up on that. Or if you're someone that says, we don't need the admissions piece, but we just want the financial aid piece, same thing, right into support at College Aid.
Yeah, I just put that in the chat. So
Yep.
there's a link to this PDF in the chat. There's a link to the club. But guys, you're going to get the landing page in your email and you'll have all of this. But as Matt said, you can put your phone right up to the page he's on right now. You got to maybe make it so we can see the whole thing, Matt.
Oh, sorry. Somebody's
Just
asking
make
for.
sure the QR code is totally on the page.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you're on your phone, and then otherwise, this is in the link. Okay. Yeah. And just the admissions help, $4,000, guys, for just the admissions help.
Yeah, as Matt said, we're here to support you, whatever bucket you fall in. If it's just financial, if it's financial and Brian, if it's just Brian, you know, we can accommodate all of that. So,
and then we will have we do have some discounts for twins on the financial aid side, less so on the admission side, just because we're working, as Peg knows and Peg said at the top, two different individuals. But on the financial aid side, we're working with one household. So again, same deal. You can just write it to support@collegeaidpro.com. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, Brian, as always, I learned something new here, and yeah, hopefully everybody else learned something new. Great audience. Sorry we couldn't get all the questions tonight. Right, we were outmatched here, but great questions. Hopefully you learned something. And again, if nothing else, just like we said, and you'll hear us always say, start now. Don't go at it alone. Whatever not alone looks like, we're here for you in whatever capacity.
Have a good night, everyone.
all right, everybody, have a good one.
Good night.